My mother, A's, was the most beautiful girl in our village. Everyone said she had a bright future ahead. She was top of her class, had a scholarship waiting for her, and even had a chance to study abroad. But right after high school, she made a choice that changed everything. She married Amir, the smartest boy in school. They were supposed to be the golden couple, full of promise and ambition. Then, I was born. My mother gave up on her dreams to take care of me, while my father focused on his career. Money was always tight, and their arguments got worse every night. One day, he walked out and never came back. After that, my mother changed. She became cold, distant. It was like she blamed me for everything that had gone wrong in her life. The only comfort I had was reading the old science books my father had left behind. But my mother hated it. "Stop acting like a bookworm," she would snap. "Books won't feed you." A year later, she married Khan. On my third birthday, my little brother Karam was born. From that moment on, he became the center of their world. They turned my tiny bedroom into a nursery and moved me into the attic. I was barely more than a shadow in my own house. When I turned 8, my parents threw a huge party. I thought, just maybe, they'd finally acknowledge me. But when the cake arrived, only my brother's name was on it. That was the day I realized I wasn't part of their family. I buried myself in my work, teaching myself to build machines from scraps. One evening, I built a small robot and ran downstairs, excited to show them. Just as I was about to speak, Karam burst into the room, announcing he'd been made lead dancer in the school festival. My mother and stepfather showered him with praise, took him out for a celebration, and left me standing there, forgotten. Karam didn't just outshine me, he made it his mission to ruin me. He switched my shampoo with glue, blamed me for every mess he made, and even destroyed my science projects. Every time I tried to defend myself, my mother would sigh, "Why can't you be more like your brother?" By middle school, I had won a national robotics competition. I came home clutching my medal, hoping, just once, they'd be proud of me. My stepfather scoffed. "Technology is just a fad. It'll be worthless soon," Karam smirked. "She's just a nerd like her loser father. What did he ever achieve?" Their words cut deep, but I refused to let them break me. I studied in secret, hiding my books under loose floorboards in the attic. When I brought home straight A's, my mother confiscated my textbooks, telling me to focus on real-life skills. At 16, I secretly entered an international competition for young inventors. The prize? A full scholarship and a chance to showcase my work to top investors. I worked tirelessly on my project, an AI-powered camera system that could predict and enhance viral trends, a game changer for online content creators. The night before the finals, Karam accidentally spilled water all over my project, frying the circuits. I tried to salvage what I could, but my dream crumbled before my eyes. The next day, I stood in front of the judges with my half-broken device. Just as I was about to explain, sparks erupted from the machine, filling the room with smoke. The alarms blared, security rushed in, and the competition was shut down. I was banned from ever competing again. When I got home, my stepfather threw the official letter onto the table. "You embarrassed us. Do you realize what you've done?" I clenched my fists. "I just wanted you to be proud of me." "Well, you failed," my mother said coldly. "Now you'll work to pay for this mess." That night, I made a vow. I would leave that house. I would build my own future, with or without them. A few days later, while wandering the city looking for a job, I stumbled upon a small shop tucked between a cafe and a bookstore. The shelves were packed with cameras, microphones, and editing software. The sign above the counter read, "Urson's Digital Wonders." A voice startled me. "You're not like our usual customers." I turned to see a guy about my age, leaning against the counter with a smirk. His dark eyes studied me. "And you are?" I asked. "Alton," he said. "And you?" "Layla." He glanced at my hands. "You've got ink on your fingers. You build things." I hesitated. "Yeah. So?" His smirk widened. "Then maybe you're exactly what we need. Can you start tomorrow?" I had no idea that stepping into that shop would change everything. Starting at Urson's Digital Wonders was the first real decision I had ever made for myself. I didn't need permission. I didn't ask for approval. I just showed up. The shop was cramped, dimly lit, and cluttered with half-open boxes of camera lenses tangled charging cables, and shelves overflowing with tech gear. But to me, it was paradise. Alton leaned against the counter, watching as I hesitated by the doorway. "You actually showed up?" he said, smirking. "Didn't think you would." "Why not?" I shot back. He shrugged. "Most people don't take risks." I stepped inside, running my fingers along the edge of a sleek camera. "Then I guess I'm not most people?" He grinned. "We'll see about that." Urson, the shop owner, was a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a no-nonsense attitude. He barely glanced up from his work as Alton introduced me. "Layla's a builder," Alton said. "We could use someone like her," Urson snorted. "We sell cameras, kid, not robots." "I can do more than build robots," I said, crossing my arms. That got his attention. He set down his screwdriver and peered at me over his glasses. "You know how to fix these?" He tapped the camera beside him. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. Shutters jammed. "Looks like a wiring issue, maybe a short circuit." Urson raised an eyebrow. "Show me." I grabbed a small tool from the counter, popped open the back, and got to work. Within minutes, the shutter clicked back into place. I handed it back to him, and he tested it. "Perfect." Urson nodded approvingly. "All right, you can stay." That was how it began. The days at the shop passed in a blur of wires, circuits, and late-night conversations with Altan. He was nothing like the people I grew up with. He didn't care about social status, didn't mock me for being too smart, and never once compared me to anyone else. One evening, as we sat in the back room, surrounded by open laptops and half-eaten snacks, Altan leaned back in his chair and stretched. "So, what's your deal?" I looked up from the microphone I was repairing. "What do you mean?" He tilted his head. "You're obviously brilliant, but you're here, working in a tiny tech shop instead of, I don't know, running your own company or something." I hesitated. "Let's just say, my family didn't exactly support my interests." Alton scoffed. "Yeah, families can suck like that." "You too?" I asked. He sighed, staring at the ceiling. "My dad owns a media company, big shot businessman. He wanted me to follow in his footsteps, be the next generation of leadership or whatever. But I don't want to spend my life in some office, pretending to care about stock prices. So I left." I studied him for a moment. "That's why you're here?" "That, and Urson pays me in free food and a place to crash," he said, grinning. "And, I like this stuff. Cameras, tech, content creation, it's the future. There's real power in it." I nodded. "Yeah, I think so too." He sat up. "Wait. You built that AI-powered camera system for the competition, right? What if we actually made it? For real?" I froze. "You know about that?" He shrugged. "Did some digging? You're kind of a big deal in the underground tech world." I swallowed hard. "That project, it's dead." "My brother ruined it." Alton's jaw tightened. "Sounds like a waste of genius. And I don't believe in waste." His words sparked something in me, something I had buried for a long time. For the first time since the competition disaster, I let myself imagine it. A real version of my project. An AI-driven system that could analyze content trends in real time, optimizing video production, thumbnail designs, even predicting what would go viral before it happened. The ultimate tool for YouTubers, streamers, and digital creators. "Think about it," Altan continued. "All those wannabe influencers struggling to make it big, they'd kill for something like this." I bit my lip. "Even if we could build it, we'd need funding, resources." He grinned. "Leave that to me." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. By day, I worked at the shop, fixing cameras and learning more about content creation. By night, Alton and I worked on our prototype, transforming my old design into something bigger, better. It was exhilarating. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was creating. But then, my past came knocking. One evening, as I locked up the shop, a familiar voice called out, "Layla?" I turned, heart sinking. Karam stood there, hands stuffed into the pockets of his designer jacket. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice even. He smirked. "Relax. Can't a brother visit his long-lost sister?" I narrowed my eyes. "You never visited before." Karam sighed, pretending to look sympathetic. "Mom and Dad heard you were working some low-level tech job. They're worried about you." I scoffed. "Right, they're worried now? After everything? They just don't want you to waste your life, he said. I clenched my fists. Funny. That's exactly what they told me when they threw out my books. Karam sighed. Look, I know we weren't exactly close, save it. My voice was sharp. I don't need their concern. Or yours. He tilted his head. You always were stubborn. I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me cold. You know, Dad's company is expanding into the digital market. AI-powered content creation. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? My blood ran cold. I spun around. What did you just say? Karam smirked. He got a tip-off about some brilliant young inventor who had an idea for an AI content predictor. Shame she couldn't handle the pressure. So he picked up the concept himself. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. They had stolen my idea. Alton stepped out of the shop, sensing the tension. Everything okay? Karam glanced at him, then back at me. Just a little family chat. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Tell them they can steal whatever they want. It won't matter, Karam smirked. We'll see. Then he turned and walked away. Alton looked at me. What the hell was that about? I exhaled sharply. They took my project. My own family is going to sell it as their own. His eyes darkened. Then we'll make sure ours is better. And just like that, the spark of determination reignited. This wasn't just about proving myself anymore. This was war. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying Karam's smug face, the way he had casually thrown out the news that my stepfather was stealing my work. I should have seen it coming. Of course they would take my ideas the second they saw value in them. When I was just a nerdy bookworm, they couldn't care less. But now that they could make money off it, suddenly it was worth something. Alton and I met at the shop early the next morning. He handed me a coffee without a word. How bad is it? He finally asked. I sighed, rubbing my temples. If my stepfather is moving into the AI content game, that means he's already pitching the project. He probably has investors lined up. Alton sat on the counter, sipping his drink. Can we beat him to market? I hesitated. Maybe. But we don't have the resources he does. No major funding, no development team, just us. Alton smirked. Us is enough. I wanted to believe that. I really did. We worked nonstop for the next few weeks, refining our AI. I stayed up late tweaking the algorithms, making sure the prediction model was more accurate than anything on the market. Alton handled the content side, testing it against real-time trends, making adjustments, building a prototype that influencers could actually use. It wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about taking back what was mine. Then came the next problem. Okay, we need funding, Alton said one night, leaning back in his chair. If we want this to actually take off, we need money for a server, a proper platform, and oh yeah, marketing. I stared at my laptop screen, exhausted. And where exactly do we get funding? Alton grinned. Ever heard of Metin Yilmaz? I blinked. The YouTube investor? He nodded. The guy funds promising startups in the content space. If we can get a meeting with him, we might have a shot. I frowned. You say that like it's easy, Alton shrugged. It's not, but I know someone who knows someone. Alton. He held up a hand. Relax. Just trust me. I stared at him. I had never trusted anyone with my work before, but Alton had been here since day one. If anyone deserved a chance, it was him. All right, I said, let's do it. The meeting was set for the following week. That gave us 7 days to finalize our prototype. 7 days to make sure there were no errors, no glitches, nothing that could make us look like amateurs. Then, the night before the pitch, I got a call from an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Hello? A familiar voice spoke. You never learn, do you? My grip on the phone tightened. Karam, I hear you have a meeting tomorrow. He sounded amused. Metin Yilmaz, huh? Impressive. I stayed silent. Karam sighed dramatically. Layla, do you really think you can win? My father already has deals in place. By the time you get anything off the ground, we'll have locked down the market. Anger bubbled up inside me. You stole my idea. You abandoned it, he corrected. You lost your chance, so we took it. That's business. My hands shook. You have no clue what I'm capable of. He chuckled. Maybe. But tomorrow, you'll find out just how little power you have. See you soon, sis. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding. Alton walked in, noticing my face. What happened? I swallowed hard. I think they're going to sabotage the meeting. Alton's jaw tightened. Then we make damn sure they don't. The next day, we arrived at the meeting early. The office was sleek, all glass walls and modern furniture. A receptionist led us into a conference room where Metin Yilmaz himself was waiting. He was older than I expected, maybe in his 50s, with sharp eyes that seemed to see through everything. Layla, Alton. He gestured for us to sit. I've heard interesting things about your project. I took a deep breath. Thank you for meeting with us. Alton pulled out the prototype, setting it up in front of him. Our AI-driven content predictor isn't just a tool, it's a game changer. It can analyze market trends, optimize videos before they're even posted, and maximize viral potential. Metin studied the screen as Alton ran the demo. The AI analyzed real-time data, predicting which topics would blow up in the next 24 hours. After a moment, Metin leaned back, nodding slowly. Impressive. Then the door opened. I turned and my stomach dropped. Karam walked in, followed by my stepfather. I clenched my fists. Are you serious? Metin glanced between us. You two know each other? My stepfather smiled. Apologies for the interruption. We just wanted to present an alternative option. Karam pulled out their prototype. It looked polished, sleek like something built with a full development team. They had copied my work, but they had the resources to make it look shinier. Metin watched as Karam ran their demo. It was similar to ours, almost identical. My stomach twisted. This was exactly what Karam had warned me about. They wanted to humiliate us. Metin steepled his fingers. This is quite the situation. Two competing products, both using similar concepts. I opened my mouth to argue, but Alton beat me to it. The difference, he said calmly, is that ours actually works. Karam laughed. And you think ours doesn't? Alton smirked. I know yours doesn't. He tapped a few keys, pulling up a side-by-side comparison. Your system is flawed. It predicts trends after they've already started gaining traction. Ours predicts them before they even hit. Karam's smile faltered. Metin leaned forward, suddenly more interested. Is that true? Alton nodded. Check the timestamps. Their system is delayed by at least 12 hours. Ours updates instantly. Metin glanced at my stepfather. Well, my stepfather cleared his throat. It's a minor issue, easily fixable. Metin turned back to us. And if I invest in your product? I met his gaze. You won't just be investing in a product. You'll be investing in the future of content creation. And we won't just follow trends, we'll create them. Metin studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. I like your confidence. My stepfather shifted uncomfortably. Karam looked like he wanted to throw something. Metin stood up. I'll review both proposals and be in touch. That was our cue to leave. As we stepped into the hallway, Karam grabbed my arm. You think you've won? He hissed. I smiled. No. I know I have. Then I walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years. The ride back from the meeting was quiet. I stared out the window, my mind still replaying every second of that showdown. My stepfather had looked furious. Karam had looked rattled. But none of it mattered unless Metin Yilmaz made the right call. Alton finally broke the silence. We pulled it off. I exhaled for now, but you know they're not going to back down that easily. He smirked. Good. I love a challenge. I wished I could share his confidence, but my stepfather didn't play fair. He had money, power, and a network of investors who would throw cash at any half-baked idea if he promised them a return. He didn't need to out-innovate us. He just needed to outspend us. And that scared me. The next few days were a blur of waiting. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach twisted. But no call came. Alton and I kept refining the AI, making it smarter, faster. We tweaked its algorithms, tested new data sets, ran it through simulations. It wasn't just about beating my stepfather anymore. It was about proving once and for all that I was the real deal. Then, on the fourth day, my phone finally rang. I nearly dropped it in my rush to answer. Hello? Metin's voice came through, calm and measured. Layla, I've made my decision. I held my breath. I'm investing in your project. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me. Thank you. You won't regret it. I know, Metin said. But be prepared. Your stepfather is going to come after you. I swallowed hard. I'm ready. Was I? The money hit our account that afternoon. It wasn't a massive sum, just enough to cover server costs, marketing, and a small development team, but it was the push we needed. "All right," Alton said, grinning as he scrolled through the numbers. "Now we make history. We hired 2 developers, a marketing strategist, and a content consultant. The team was small, but they were all young, hungry, and brilliant. Within weeks, our AI system Viralture was in beta testing, and the results? Insane. Our system was predicting viral trends with 87% accuracy. Influencers who tested it were gaining traction at speeds they'd never seen before. Word spread fast. Big creators started reaching out, wanting early access. We were blowing up. And then, of course, my stepfather made his move. One morning, Alton stormed into the shop, slamming his laptop onto the counter. "They copied us." I barely had time to process his words before he pulled up a news article. "Altoona Tech launches revolutionary AI for content creators." I clicked the link. My stepfather's company had released their own version of Viralture. They had fixed their lagging prediction times and slapped a massive price tag on it. I felt sick. "They're selling it as a premium service." Alton nodded grimly. "Subscription model. Big influencers get early access. Everyone else pays through the nose." I clenched my fists. "We need to hit back. Hard." Alton smirked. "Way ahead of you." He turned his screen, showing me our new marketing strategy. We weren't going to compete on price. We were going to destroy them on accessibility. "Free beta access to small creators," Alton said. "Underdogs, niche channels, the people who actually need this tech. Let them use it, build their careers with it, they'll be loyal for life." I grinned. "Let's do it." The response was immediate. Smaller creators flocked to Viralture, spreading the word faster than we could keep up with. Our AI became the go-to tool for aspiring YouTubers, TikTokers, and streamers who couldn't afford my stepfather's overpriced version. And the best part? It was working. Their content was blowing up. We started trending ourselves. Major YouTubers mentioned us in their videos. Twitter threads analyzed our AI's accuracy. Then, a week later, my stepfather called. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to hear him admit defeat. I put him on speaker. "Hello?" A long pause. "Then, you made your point." I raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" Another pause. Then, a sigh. "Come work for me, Layla." I barked out a laugh. "You're joking. I'm serious," he said. "You're talented. I'll double whatever Yilmaz invested in you. You can lead our AI division." I leaned back, glancing at Alton, who was shaking his head with a smirk. "So let me get this straight," I said. "You ignored me my whole life, called me a failure, let Karam sabotage my work, then stole my idea. And now you want to buy me out? You've made a lot of enemies," he said coolly. "You think Yilmaz is going to protect you forever?" I exhaled slowly. "I don't need protection. I just need to keep winning." Silence. Then his voice turned cold. "You just made a very dangerous mistake." He hung up. I looked at Alton. "That wasn't a threat, right?" Alton rolled his eyes. "Oh, definitely a threat." I grinned. "Good. That means we're winning." Over the next few weeks, Viralture kept skyrocketing. Our user base tripled. Investors started calling us. Then the real knockout punch came. Late one night, Alton burst into the shop, waving his phone. "Dude, we just got the kill shot." He handed me his phone. It was a leaked report. Altoona Tech's AI accused of data manipulation, users outraged. I skimmed the article, my pulse racing. My stepfather's company had been caught skewing trends, favoring high-paying clients while burying independent creators. Their AI wasn't predicting trends, it was controlling them. The internet exploded. Hashtags like hashtag Altoona Tech scandal and hashtag ContentGate trended worldwide. Creators were furious. Investors pulled out. And just like that, my stepfather's empire started crumbling. Alton grinned. "So, wanna call him back? Maybe offer him a job?" I laughed, shaking my head. "Nah, I think we'll be just fine." For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing validation. I wasn't trying to prove myself to a family that never saw me. I had built something real, and I wasn't stopping anytime soon. The morning after the scandal broke, my inbox was flooded. News outlets wanted interviews. Former Altoona tech clients were begging to switch to Viralture. Investors who had ignored us before were suddenly excited to discuss partnerships. It felt surreal. Alton grinned as he scrolled through the trending topics. Man, this is wild. Your stepfather's company is tanking. Stock prices dropped overnight. Half their clients pulled out. I nodded, but inside, I felt uneasy. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? To take them down? To prove myself? So why did it feel like we had only won a battle, not the war? Because I knew my stepfather, and I knew he wouldn't go down that easily. I had barely finished that thought when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Hello? A deep voice, one I recognized instantly. Layla. I exhaled sharply. What do you want, Con? Silence. Then he chuckled. You've really made a mess, haven't you? I clenched my jaw. You did this to yourself. No, you did, he said, voice calm, controlled. You embarrassed me. You humiliated my company. Do you think that goes without consequences? My grip tightened around my phone. You stole from me. I just took it back. I stole from you? He laughed. You wouldn't even have these ideas if it weren't for me raising you, feeding you, giving you a roof over your head. Everything you are, you owe to me. A slow burn of anger curled in my stomach. I don't owe you anything. Silence stretched between us. Then his voice turned sharp. This little game of yours is over. I have more power, more money, and more connections than you can ever dream of. You got one lucky break, but that won't last. The industry will eat you alive. I smirked, even though he couldn't see it. Funny, that's exactly what they said about you last night. His breathing sharpened. You think you're untouchable? I think I'm better than you, I said. And you hate that. A pause. Then his voice dropped. Layla, step aside now. Take the money. Walk away. No. His tone turned cold. Then don't say I didn't warn you. The line went dead. I slowly lowered my phone. Alton had been watching me the whole time. He exhaled. That sounded very mafia movie villain. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. Yeah, he's pissed. Which means he's desperate. Alton leaned forward. That's good. I stared at the wall, my mind racing. No, that's dangerous. Because I knew my stepfather, and he never fought fair. The first attack came the next day. Our website crashed, completely wiped. When we checked the logs, it was obvious. A cyber attack. Coordinated. Professional. Alton groaned. Yep, that's them. We scrambled to get it back online, but before we could, someone leaked our private user data anonymized, but still enough to cause a panic. Online, people started questioning whether they could trust Viralture. If we couldn't protect their data, could we really help their careers? Then came the smear campaigns. Fake negative reviews flooded in. Bots spammed our comment sections, calling us frauds, accusing us of manipulating our own trends. The worst part? Some people believed it. The momentum we had built started slipping through our fingers. Alton paced back and forth in the shop. All right, this is bad. What do we do? I stared at the screen, my mind spinning. My stepfather was using the one thing I had never been able to fight against: power, money, influence, connections. He wasn't just trying to ruin us. He was trying to erase us. I clenched my fists. We fight back. Alton stopped pacing. How? I took a deep breath. By doing the one thing he can't. Alton raised an eyebrow. Which is? I looked at him, my mind already forming a plan. We go public. That night, I filmed a video. No fancy edits, no AI enhancements. Just me, sitting in front of the camera, telling the truth. I laid it all out. How my stepfather had stolen my idea. How he had tried to erase my work. How he was using his power to silence competition. Then I did something unexpected. I turned the tables on him. I offered full transparency. We made mistakes, I admitted. Our security wasn't strong enough. We let you down. But here's how we're fixing it. I outlined the steps we were taking to strengthen our data protection. I promised real-time updates on our progress. I invited cybersecurity experts to test our system publicly. No NDAs. No corporate lies. Everything we do, you'll see it. Then I made the final move. I opened Viralture to the public. No subscriptions, no paid premium tiers, just access. This tool isn't just for influencers with money, I said. It's for everyone. If you want to go viral, if you want to grow, this is for you. Alton uploaded the video. Then we waited, and within hours, everything changed. The response was insane. People loved it. Creators rallied behind us. Tech analysts called it a revolution in content AI. Even cybersecurity experts weighed in, praising our transparency. More importantly, people chose us. They abandoned my stepfather's platform in droves. His overpriced, closed system model couldn't compete with something that was free, open, and powered by real creators. And the best part? The truth about his dirty tactics spread like wildfire. Hashtag AltunaTexposed started trending worldwide. His investors panicked. His stock plummeted. And just like that, the empire he had spent years building collapsed. A week later, I got another unknown call. I answered. Let me guess. This is the part where you beg? Silence. Then my stepfather spoke. You think you've won? I smiled. No, I know I have. His voice was barely above a whisper. You have no idea what you've done. I shrugged. I did what you never could. I built something people actually believe in. Silence again. Then, quietly, so quietly, I almost missed it, he muttered. You're just like him. I froze. Like who? He exhaled sharply. Your father. For the first time, his voice wasn't cold. It wasn't threatening. It was something else. Regret? Pain? I didn't know. And I didn't care. Because I wasn't like my father. And I sure as hell wasn't like him. I was something new. I hung up. Alton looked at me. You okay? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. Yeah, I think I finally am. We had done it. We had won. But something told me this was just the beginning. The dust was still settling. Altunatech had crumbled under the weight of its own corruption. My stepfather lost everything: his investors, his credibility, his dominance in the industry. Meanwhile, viralture was everywhere. I should have felt victorious. And I did. But something still lingered in the back of my mind. That final conversation. The way my stepfather's voice had shifted when he said, You're just like him. My father. The man who had walked out of my life before I could even remember his face. I had spent so much of my life fighting to prove I wasn't worthless. That I wasn't invisible. And now that I had finally made something of myself, I couldn't shake the feeling that I needed to know why he left. Alton noticed. Of course he did. He always did. One night, as we sat on the rooftop of the shop, staring at the city lights, he nudged me. All right, spill, I sighed. It's nothing. Alton raised an eyebrow. Layla, you just crushed the man who made your life hell. And instead of celebrating, you're sitting here, staring off into space like some tragic movie protagonist. I smirked. Maybe I just like being mysterious. He rolled his eyes. Or maybe you're thinking about what Khan said. I swallowed hard. He compared me to my father. Alton leaned back on his elbows. And that bothers you? I hesitated. I don't know, maybe? I barely know anything about him. Just that he was smart, ambitious, and that he left. Alton was quiet for a moment. Then, softly, he said, Maybe it's time you found out. I turned to him. How? He grinned. Lucky for you, I happen to be very good at finding people. 2 weeks later, Alton handed me a slip of paper, an address, a name, a phone number. He's alive, Alton said. Living in Izmir, he works in research, AI development. I stared at the paper. My father had been in tech this whole time? Alton nudged me. You gonna call him? I took a shaky breath. I don't know. What if he doesn't want to see me? Alton snorted. Layla, you just took down an entire corporate empire, and you're afraid of calling one dude? I glared at him. That dude is my father, all the more reason. He crossed his arms. Look, worst case, he's a jerk and you move on. Best case, you get answers. Either way, you stop wondering. I exhaled. He was right. I hated not knowing, so I called. The phone rang 3 times before a voice answered. Deep. Familiar. Hello? My mouth went dry. Hi, is this Emir Kaya? A pause. Yes. Who's this? I gripped the edge of the counter. It's Layla. Silence. Then a sharp intake of breath. Layla? His voice cracked slightly, and I wasn't sure what to make of it. Regret? Shock? Something else? I swallowed hard. Yeah. Another pause. Then, quietly, you found me. A lump formed in my throat. Yeah, I did. We agreed to meet in a quiet cafe near his office. I arrived early, my hands wrapped around a cup of tea I wasn't drinking. My heart was pounding. Then the door opened, and I knew it was him before I even saw his face. He had my eyes, the same sharp focus, the same intensity, but where I carried fire, his held something softer, something broken. He sat across from me, exhaling shakily. You look just like your mother. I stiffened. That's not why I'm here. He nodded. I know. Silence stretched between us. Then, finally, I asked the question that had haunted me my whole life. Why did you leave? He flinched, looked down. I didn't want to, I scoffed. That's not an answer. He sighed. Your mother? She and I had different dreams. I wanted to build, innovate. She wanted stability, a normal life. I stared at him, and his jaw tightened, and I failed. I couldn't provide for both of you. Money was tight. She resented me for chasing ideas instead of a steady paycheck. One night, we fought. She told me to leave, said she'd be better off without me. So I left. I clenched my fists. You just walked away? His eyes met mine, full of regret. I thought she'd let me back. I thought, after some time, she'd call. But she never did. And then, she married Khan. And I knew I had lost you. I shook my head. You could have fought for me. He looked down. I should have. I felt a lump in my throat. Do you know what it was like? Growing up feeling like I didn't belong? Like I wasn't good enough? Pain flashed in his expression. Layla, I became you, I whispered. I built. I innovated. And they hated me for it. He exhaled. I never wanted that for you. Then why didn't you stop it? He had no answer. We sat in silence for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, I saw what you built. I blinked. What? He smiled, just a little. Viralture. It's brilliant, I swallowed. Yeah, it is, he hesitated. Then, carefully, he said, I'd like to know you, if you'll let me. I didn't answer right away. There was no easy fix, no way to undo the years apart. But maybe, just maybe, we could start over, I exhaled. We'll see. He nodded. Fair enough. The next few months were a whirlwind. Viralture grew faster than we ever expected. Investors kept pouring in, but we were smart about who we partnered with. We didn't sell out. We kept control. Alton and I worked side by side, pushing boundaries, creating something that was bigger than either of us had ever imagined. And my father? He didn't disappear again. He didn't suddenly become the parent I had always wanted. But he tried. He called. He showed up. And for now, that was enough. One night, Alton and I sat on the rooftop of our new office, staring at the city lights. So, he said, nudging me, what's next? I smirked. World domination? He laughed. Obviously. I leaned back, feeling lighter than I ever had. I don't know. But whatever it is, I think I'm finally ready for it. Alton grinned. Then, let's make some history. And just like that, a new chapter began. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running from the past. I was running toward the future. And it was going to be unstoppable. Story 2, Reddit. Hello. My name is Alex, and I recently turned 21. That should be a huge thing, wouldn't it? A significant birthday? A little meal, perhaps. At the very least, a cake and a happy birthday. My folks texted me. However, no. There were more essential plans for my family. I wish I could claim that I was taken aback. But to be honest, things have always been this way. Since I was a little child, my parents have made it apparent that I come in second in their household. Emma, my younger sister, is the best of the best. She obtains what she desires. She receives attention when she needs it. And if there's anything I desire that even remotely annoys them, unfortunately. Nevertheless, I clung to the slim hope that this year might be different. Their favoritism is less frequent now that I don't live at home. However, I assume that they would want to celebrate both of their children on my 20th birthday. That morning, I sent a text message to the family group chat. Hello, what time is our dinner meeting? No answer. Hours went by. I assumed that someone would text me back by £0. 03 while I went about my day. I began to feel like I was sinking. At last, I caved up and gave my mother a call. The second ring caught her attention. Her tone was informal. "Alex, hello. What is going on?" I paused. "I take it we're still having dinner?" Quiet. Then a sigh. "Way too gently," she said. "Oh, honey. I ought to have informed you sooner. Emma and I are heading out tonight." I felt sick to my stomach. "What are you?" Her voice seemed almost bored. "We're bringing Emma out to celebrate some wonderful news." I blinked. "My birthday is today." She chuckled as if I were a young child complaining about misplacing a toy. "Don't be too emotional, Alex. Next weekend, we'll do something for you, will we?" Emma's voice could be heard in the background. "Is Alex there? Inform him that some leftovers will be saved for him." More giggling. My cheeks started to get hot. This wasn't only carelessness. This was intentional. I had the option to argue. I might have shouted. However, what was the purpose? Their actions were well known. They simply didn't give a damn. So I answered, "Yeah, sure, have fun," swallowing the knot in my throat. I hung up after that. I sat there looking at my phone for a while. I had trembling hands. Not out of melancholy. No, I was furious. Then I thought of something. I gave my girlfriend Lily a call. "Hello," I spoke in a steady tone. "Do you want to get supper with someone tonight?" She knew right away that something was wrong. Naturally. "What's the matter?" I told her everything. She made no hesitation at all. "Come on over. My parents will want to join you in celebrating." Right now, Lily's parents are wonderful. Throughout the last 3 years, they have consistently shown me more kindness than my own parents had throughout my whole life. Her mother also gave me a hug when I arrived at their home. "My dear, happy birthday. Enter. We're heading to a pleasant place. We arrived at this upscale steakhouse. My folks like to boast about visiting this type of site. The entire evening was perfect. To commemorate my 20th birthday, Lily's father even purchased a bottle of champagne. And I truly felt desired for the first time that day. However, the true enjoyment came when I wrote about it. I snapped a photo of the restaurant's entrance after dinner and shared it on Instagram with the message, "Thank you so much to my girlfriend and her wonderful family for making my birthday so memorable. I'm so appreciative of those who genuinely care about me. I didn't think my parents would respond. They wouldn't even notice it until the following day," I assumed. However, my phone began to explode less than an hour later. My mother texted me first. "Mom, what is this post about, Alex?" Next, my father, "Are you serious, Dad? Now?" A full-on phone call follows. I grinned to myself as I let it ring. Then another. Then another. They were furious, and I understood why. It wasn't remorse. It wasn't regret. Jealousy was the cause. It was their responsibility to be viewed as the good parents. They enjoyed pretending to be the ideal family, sharing their elaborate dinners and their pride in Emma on social media. But all of a sudden, they detested the fact that I was the one receiving attention for being wronged. When the fourth call came in, I answered it casually. "Oh, hello, Mother. What is going on?" She left. "Alex, what on earth are you doing? People are observing this. You're ruining our reputation." I refrained from laughing. I would want to express my gratitude to everyone who came to celebrate my birthday. She let out a gasp as though I had stabbed her. "You have no right to attempt to make us look foolish in this way. You know, if we hadn't had other obligations, we would have joined you in celebrating." I gave a snort. "Yes, exactly. More thrilling information. Alex," she said, "we raised you. And you pay us back like this? By giving us that appearance. Parents." I was finished. I inhaled deeply before saying, "You probably shouldn't have acted like bad parents if you didn't want to look like bad parents." Quiet. My dad then picked up the phone. "You must immediately remove the post." I smiled. "No, Alex." His tone was menacingly low. "If you don't remove it, there will be repercussions." I reclined in my seat. "Oh? Such as?" He took a while to respond. In the background, I could hear my mother frantically whispering, "We're coming over," he said. And that's when things get very fascinating on Reddit. As my dad's words reverberated in my ear, I leaned forward and clutched my phone. "We'll be over." Despite the adrenaline rush, I maintained a calm voice. "All right," I responded, smirking just a little bit. "I'll see you shortly." I hung up after that. Lily, who had been seated on the couch beside me, arched an eyebrow. "I thought that was your parents." "Yes, indeed." Shaking my head, I said. "They're furious. They seem to be embarrassed by me." Lily gave an eye roll. God forbid they have to face the repercussions of their own behavior. Her father, who had been across the room listening, sneered. "Allow them to arrive. They ought to witness the true essence of a loving family." Her mother, who was always the sensible one, sighed. "It might turn nasty. Do you really want to deal with them this evening?" I let out a slow breath. "To be honest, yes, I do. I had allowed them to treat me like an afterthought for years. They sacrificed everything for Emma for years, and I was supposed to handle it alone. And I was in control for the first time. Desperate, they rushed to take charge of the story. That indicated that I was at last doing something correctly. I heard the distinct sound of a vehicle coming into the driveway around 20 minutes later. Lily offered me a supportive grip on the arm as I got to my feet, stretched as if I had endless time. "Have you got this?" she whispered. The doorbell rang. "No." 3 or 4 slams in quick succession. "Oh, Matt, they're furious." Lily's father laughed and walked over to the door. "I'll get it." Immediately after he opened it, as if she owned the area, my mom barged in. My dad's gaze instantly locked on mine as he followed my jaw tightly. "Alex." My mother's voice pierced the atmosphere. "We must now speak." I folded my arms. "Proceed." She looked around the room, at Lily's parents, at the comfortable setting, at the obvious proof that I was okay, that I was doing well without them. She was obviously uneasy about it. Stiffly, she responded, "Not here. Step outdoors, thank you, but no." Leaning on the sofa, I said, "You can speak right here if you have something to say." My father balled his fists. "Alex, you need to stop being so rude." I arched an eyebrow. "Mentality? You mean defending myself, I see. Apologies." "I'm still getting used to the idea of respecting myself." My mother exhaled sharply. She was becoming impatient. "We will not allow you to publicly humiliate us in this manner. Are you aware of the number of individuals who have viewed your post? Your aunts? Uncles of yours? Do you realize how embarrassing it is to be portrayed as villains by our own son?" I gave her a blink before deadpanned, saying, "Maybe don't be villains." Lily gave a snort. Even her father suppressed a laugh. My mother's cheeks flushed. "Alex, we are your parents. We are worthy of some deference. Respect, eh? Do you mean the deference you gave me by leaving me on my birthday? Or the time you made fun of me over the phone? However, you were clear that Emma will always come first." I gave a headshake. "Apologies. The bit when you truly gain my respect must have slipped my mind." My father stepped up and said quietly, "You're exaggerating." "No, I'm being truthful at last." I fired back. There was a lot of tension in the room. This was new to my folks. They were accustomed to my giving in and saying, "I was sorry for folding." Not this time, though. Then Lily caught my mother's attention. Specifically, how she was sitting next to me with such ease and holding my hand as like she were a part of my life. That's when I noticed it. My mother's realization that I now had people. People who loved me even if they weren't required to. Those who recognized my value. Something she was never interested in doing. She detested it as well. "This is what this is about," she added in a condescending tone. "Are you attempting to use them in lieu of us?" Beside me, Lily tensed, but I simply shrugged. My dad sneered. "If the shoe fits." "Get enough of this bullshit. You are now removing that post." I smiled. "No." His nose wrinkled. "Don't test me, Alex." "Or what?" I posed a challenge. "What will you do specifically? Put me on the ground." "Remove my phone." "Oh, hold on. I no longer live under your roof, therefore you can't." "I am completely beyond your control." That struck a chord. A nasty tint of crimson came across my dad's face, and I honestly believed that he was going to lose it for a moment. At that point, however, my mother used her trump card since she had become uncomfortably silent. "You'll be sorry, Alex," she replied quietly. "What you're discarding is unknown to you." I cocked my head. "What precisely am I discarding?" She looked at me knowingly. When she said, Your inheritance, I felt a shudder go down my spine. I was unable to resist. In fact, I chuckled right in front of her. It was almost reflexive, almost instinctive. I couldn't contain myself. My eyes narrowed as I gave my mother a quick, sour laugh. Willingness? I repeated, still laughing. Which inheritance? Do you believe that I need your money? You don't understand, do you? She hesitated, obviously startled by my response. I crossed my arms and leaned forward. You've never helped me in any way. Every opportunity you've had, you've made it plain that I don't deserve your love, attention, or energy. So don't lecture me about the things I'm discarding. Because guess what? You have run out of things to offer me. Like a fish, my mother's mouth expanded and closed. A mixture of bewilderment and rage distorted her expression. And after all of this, you're crazy if you think I'd ever accept anything from you. I shook my head and went on. I'm not in need of your cash. I don't require your phony affection. I already know all there is to know about you, and I don't want to hold on to it. It seemed like my dad was about to blow up. With his fist clasped at his sides, he inhaled deeply. You lack gratitude. Do you truly intend to discard everything we have provided for you? Before I realized he had a choice, I was on the verge of feeling terrible for him. He had the opportunity to defend myself, had the potential to be a parent rather than a pawn in my mother's whims. He didn't. No. Calmly, I'm not ungrateful. I will not, however, sit here and act as though I do not recognize the type of person you are. I'm making my decisions now that you've made yours. From the other side of the room, Lily's father nodded reassuringly, his eyes brimming with silent pride. At that, I saw my mother wince, and I couldn't help but feel a tiny victory. She had never even considered the possibility that I would be better off without her since she had been so focused on managing my life. We cannot be abruptly removed from your life in this manner, my mother remarked, her voice now shaking. Your family is us. Alex, you'll regret this. Don't you think you'll come crawling back? Sarcastically, I replied. There, I'll be pleading for more disrespect and hollow promises. However, that will never occur. Because guess what? You've already shown your true self to me. My legs felt remarkably stable as I got to my feet, and I'm finished. So feel free to continue threatening me and making guilt trips. But know that I'm no longer fooled by it. Once more, my dad opened his lips, but he just clamped it shut. They were left with nothing. The control, the manipulation, the power they used to have over me, it had vanished. I didn't flinch, even though my mom's eyes were nearly blazing with rage. Rather, I turned to Lily's parents and nodded my gratitude. I appreciate you giving me this opportunity. I think it's time for them to go, I murmured quietly. Ever the composed one, Lily's mother grinned and got to her feet. We're heading to the kitchen to get a drink. You two ought to speak. My mother's voice broke the stillness as they left. Alex, you're doing something wrong. You'll see. I didn't give her any recognition. I had had enough of their baseless threats. Nothing else needed to be said on my part. My parents stood there, still taking in what I had just thrown at them, and the quiet between us was heavy and oppressive. They were at a loss for what to do with me. Their tried and true methods of controlling me, guilt, manipulation, and emotional blackmail were failing. Not now. I felt stronger than I had ever felt in my life as I stood there. It wasn't only that I was confronting them at last. It was the knowledge that their approval was no longer important to me. Although they were aware of the tension, Lily's parents gave us the space we required by remaining in the background. They never had to express their support for me. I could sense it. They weren't only supporting me. In an authentic sense, they were family. Additionally, I didn't feel the need to apologize for simply being for the first time. At last, my father spoke once again. His voice was low and menacing. Do you find this amusing? Do you really believe you'll get away with mistreating us in this way? Unfazed, I met his gaze directly. Dad, get away with it. For years, I've been attempting to avoid you. The sharp, agonizing words lingered in the air. It seemed like a burden I had been bearing for a very long time, taken off my chest at last. Still furious, my mother made one more attempt. Although her tone softened, it was obvious that she was still manipulating. We're your parents, Alex. We have always supported you. Our only goal has always been to assist you. Remember everything we've done for you? How you've always had our support. I tried not to chuckle again and shook my head. Really? Do you believe that? Since I can't recall any of it, I recall being disregarded, shoved aside, and made to feel inadequate. I recall being the final option. Sure, if you'd want to act as though you've been flawless. Proceed. I could see the fissures beginning to appear in her idyllic little universe as her face contorted in a mix of shock and rage. She hadn't anticipated my kind of retaliation. She assumed I would fold. Then, as always, I would give in and plead for their blessing. However, that was no longer who I was. Alex, you are to blame for this. My mother's voice trembled as she spit. It is you who is ruining this family. You believe you can simply use them in place of us? I gave her a chilly glance. No, Mother. All my life, you have been taking my place. This is just my realization that you've already lost and that I no longer need you. She stepped forward, anger blazing in her eyes. Your mommy is me. I shall always be with you. I interrupted her by raising my hand. I don't have to let you go. That's what you did to yourself already. For years, you have pushed me away. You've stated your priorities rather clearly. I'm not on that list either. Lily's father came forward, his cool manner easing the tension. It's probably time for you two to go now. His tone made it obvious that there would be no more discussion, and his voice was firm and unwavering in its finality. Even my mother realized she was losing as she looked at him with rage flashing in her eyes. With his shoulders stiff, my dad muttered something under his breath and began to move towards the door. He didn't say anything else, though. Without saying another word, they both left, the door slamming behind them. I stood there, still trying to make sense of what had just transpired. It seemed unreal. Lily approached me and put her arms around me. You succeeded, she muttered. Her voice was full with passion. You defended yourselves. I'm really pleased with you. I gave her a hug in return, experiencing a wave of relief. I have no idea how I achieved it. It seems as though they have finally lost all control over me. Lily's remarks truly remained with me, even when her parents came over and offered me supportive pats on the back. You are no longer alone. We've got you covered. Always. At last, the burden on my chest had been removed. I was able to breathe for the first time without feeling the weight of that ongoing pressure. I envisioned a time when I wouldn't have to scrounge for crumbs of affection or attention. A future in which I had free will, where I had authority. The entire night seemed to be a weird, unreal haze. However, I was certain of one thing. Now that I had finally defended myself, I had no intention of turning back. The hours went by. There was an odd calmness about the evening as it went on. As soon as my parents left the house, the tension that had been building all night seemed to vanish. However, such serenity was short-lived. I was about to unwind when my phone exploded. I was partly anticipating anything on Monday when I looked down at it, but my blood pressure shot up again when I saw my mom's name flash over the screen. I looked at it, even though I didn't want to. She texted, "This is not the end of us. This is something you'll regret. We will speak with the attorney regarding your inheritance. This will cost you money." As I read the message, I could just hear her harsh, poisonous voice in my mind. There was no danger. I knew that it was a promise. The difference today, though, is that I was no longer afraid of it. It was no longer as strong as it had been. I looked across at Lily, who was seated next to me. Her parents are allowing us some time to simply reflect on the evening. She laughed softly as I showed her the message. Is she being serious? She raised an eyebrow in question. I murmured that I was dead serious. However, my speech was devoid of any hint of dread. I was, if anything, amused. I confidently typed as I pressed the reply button. The words seemed to come from a part of me that I was unaware of. You're correct. This is not where you'll end up. However, I will tell you this. Don't spend your money. Your inheritance is yours to keep. And you know where to find me if you decide you want to speak to me like an adult, without the manipulation and threats. Don't attempt anything else, though. It won't function. And you're in for another surprise if you believe that I'm afraid. The burden that had been on my shoulders for so long was released as I pushed submit. It was even lighter. I felt as though a chapter in my life that had dragged on for far too long had been closed. My phone buzzed once more as I was setting it down. It was my dad this time. He made no attempt to leave a message. Just a series of notes in an irate voice. He was ranting about how I was destroying my life, how I would regret this, and how I was throwing everything away when I clicked on the first one. I clicked the next message after letting the previous one end. One more tirade. The same threats, the same slurs. Then another. And yet another. Their panic was increasing. His voice was becoming more and more desperate. However, none of it resonated. I didn't even try to respond. I didn't have to. I had run out of things to say. From the other side of the room, I noticed Lily's father, who raised his eyebrows in a knowing manner. "Is everything all right?" I gave a nod. A little yet contented smile curls my lips. Yes. They simply aren't accustomed to my advocating for myself. However, they will move past it. Leaning closer, Lily put her arms around me once again. "You're capable. They are no longer able to touch you." That was the reality. That's when I realized something. They couldn't remove anything important from me, nor their intimidation, nor their coercion, not even their inheritance. I had already left their fictitious family and entered the real world. I looked down as my phone buzzed once again. It was a text from my sister this time. "Your parents are upset with you. This time you made a huge mistake." Even though I could feel my old rage rising again, I refused to let it rule me this time. I refused to become enmeshed in her drama or her victim mindset. I refused to play her game rather than responding. I grinned broadly as I glanced at Lily. "What do you know?" I said, getting to my feet. "I believe it is time to have a party. I finished all of this." I turned to Lily's parents and grinned as I reached for my jacket. "Come on, let's have some beverages. There is plenty for us to rejoice over." I didn't experience the remorse or resentment I had anticipated when we departed. Rather, I had the impression that I was finally leaving a life that had been preventing me from moving forward into a future that I could control. And as I finally went outside into the crisp night air, one understood that the family I had been yearning for and looking for had always been here. Not in my birth family, but in those who made the decision to support me, who stood beside me, who gave a damn about me. I no longer need the approval of others. I didn't require their manipulation or poisonous love. I had discovered nothing and something better. I couldn't take that away from me, not even with their threats or money. And that felt like real independence for the first time in my life. What do you think then? Is it improper of me to confront them? Or did I make the correct decision? Story 3. While we recover, it will only be for a few months. As Mike nodded solemnly behind her, Jessica clung to her legs, promising her 2 children. "Natalie, we've lost everything. Our only hope is you." I'm Natalie, and at the age of 29, I was on the verge of making the worst decision of my life, allowing my stepsister's family to come into my tastefully furnished 2-bedroom flat, the office at home. The serene area where I established my freelance design firm has been refined over years. Chaos was ready to encroach on everything. "The workplace is a good place for youngsters to nap," Jessica went on, pointing to her 6-year-old Tyler and 4-year-old Emma. "The guest room is ours. You won't even realize we're here." I glanced at my spotless living room, where my drafting table was situated next to the window, letting in the ideal amount of natural light at my well-organized workstation with 2 monitors, which was just the right amount of silence for meeting client deadlines. "I work from home," I reminded them. "That area is necessary for my business. You can work wherever, I see." Jessica dismissed it with a wave. "The table in the kitchen. Your sleeping quarters. Drawing doesn't really require a big room." I suppressed a retort that graphic design was more than simply illustration. How I had created a profitable company that covered the cost of this flat. How I had picked this location with care since it was well lit and out. They had nowhere else to go, though, and they were family. Or so they said. Months of unpaid bills had resulted in the foreclosure of their own home. They blamed everyone but themselves, including the bank, the economy, and their employment. "It's only transitory." Mike reassured me, but there was a strange tone in his voice. "Only till we save up a deposit and find new work." I ought to have inquired further about their goals, schedule, financial situation, and the reasons for their inability to remain with Jessica's father or Mike's family. My ex-stepfather, who had remarried and relocated to Florida, explained why they had waited until the very last minute to seek assistance. Rather, because they were family, because they had children, and because Jessica had been grieving over her children's homelessness, I found myself saying, "Yes, you're saving lives." Jessica's expensive scent overwhelmed me as she gave me a hug. We'll be visitors at the model house. I swear. After 2 days, they moved in with more possessions than someone who had lost everything should have. The children started racing through my peaceful flat right away. Their screams reverberated off the walls. As he stretched down on my couch, Mike inquired about Jessica and the cable channels and Wi-Fi password. My kitchen cabinets were already being rearranged by her to improve their functionality. The first week served as a sneak peek at the impending disaster. My kitchen was in utter chaos every morning when I woke up. There were plenty of dishes. Overnight, food was left out. My immaculate counters have sticky places. After preparing meals for her family, Jessica says she was too tired to clean up. Juice cartons and half-eaten leftovers took over my neatly arranged refrigerator. I stored my specialty art supplies in designated locations for convenient access during client calls, but they were frequently relocated or tucked away where I couldn't find them. According to Jessica, the children require room to do their assignments. When I saw my drafting table crammed into a corner and strewn with smashed crayons and coloring books, I take it you can work in your bedroom? Even my bedroom, which served as my final haven, wasn't holy. Usually while I was on client calls, Jessica would storm in without knocking. The children require some peaceful time. She would yell and mutter as she ushered Tyler and Emma into my private area. While Mike and I do errands, just keep an eye on them for 1 hour. It seems like the errands take 3 or 4 hours every time. While Tyler bounced on my bed and Emma wrote on my walls, I would attempt to remain professional during Zoom calls. "We are looking for a job," Mike would say when they got back. However, it appears that none of them ever had a real interview. Jessica would have a new manicure, or they would return with shopping bags from the mall. The cost of my groceries quadrupled. They said they had to save every penny for their new home, so they never made a contribution. Jessica managed to pay for her monthly hair appointments and expensive coffee trips, though, somehow. Family supports family. Every time I mentioned expenditures, she would say, "Do you recall the date of our parents' marriage?" Everything was exchanged between us. Next, we hadn't told each other everything. Just like she was doing now, Jessica had stolen everything. When our parents were married, I was 11 and she was 12. And my mom had been a sneak peek at this very scenario during the 3 years prior to her dad's departure. When I requested her to please quit rearranging my painting supplies, she said, "You're being dramatic. Normal families live like this. You live alone like a hermit, so you're just not used to it." The term temporary began to seem like a joke. They didn't try to find flats. They always came up with a new excuse when I brought up their plans. Right present, the rental market is really difficult. We're holding out for the ideal moment. At last, the children are at home. We can't force them to go so quickly. My job degraded in the interim. With all of the interruptions and my desk in disarray, meeting deadlines became all but impossible. Customers began to notice that I was becoming less productive. My hard-earned reputation was in jeopardy. One Tuesday afternoon was the tipping moment. I had gone to a coffee shop in order to fulfill an important deadline. Recently, it's the only way to finish any task. 3 hours later, I came home to find my living room entirely changed. I had lost my drafting table. My twin monitor setup had been thrown against a wall and replaced by a gigantic toy organizing system that had been put into the apartment storage unit without my consent. The area where I had established my career was dominated by bright plastic containers with children's toys. Unexpected. Jessica smiled and pointed at the confusion. The children have a dedicated play space now. Much more efficient use of the area, isn't it? In the entryway, my laptop bag slipping off my shoulder, I stood still. "My drafting table is where?" "Yes, we did store that old item. In any case, you never actually utilized it. These days, you're always using your laptop." Since they had occupied my workstation, since I had had to adjust to their invasion of my house, since I had been too kind to defend myself, she wrinkled her nose and said, "Those monitors are an eyesore. Really, we ought to. Keep your hands off my equipment." I had never heard my voice sound that harsh. My workplace is here. My office. My house. Our house currently. Mike didn't even look up from his phone as he called from the couch. "Family members share?" "Correct." Jessica maintained that the children needed room to play. They cannot be expected to spend their days caged up in one room. Their offspring. "I also need her office, because I'm a working professional. It's not a creche facility in this flat. It's where I work. You're being self-centered. The pained tone of Jessica's voice returned. What specifically have you done after all we've done and everything you've done? Besides occupy my house, interfere with my job, and disregard my boundaries? We are related. No. You are occupying someone else's space. You've hunted, you've had a flat, you haven't hunted, and you haven't paid $1 towards expenditures. All you've done is take and take. When I raised my voice, Emma began to weep. Jessica grabbed her right away and gave me a martyred expression. Look at what you did now. Come on, darling. Let's escape cruel Aunt Natalie's refusal to give up her toys. I saw them withdraw to the visitors' quarters. Now their room? Apparently. And I felt something break inside of me. This was not a sharing situation. It was an invasion. My livelihood, my calm, and my space were all stolen. When they had all gone to bed that evening, I opened my laptop and began planning. I carried out my strategy throughout the course of the next week, with the same level of accuracy that I used to my design assignments. I started by looking for a new flat across town. It was a one-bedroom flat with a designated office nook and stringent lease conditions about overnight visitors. I was thankful to have saved money despite my increased expenditures from working at the coffee shop, so I used it to pay the deposit. I gradually relocated my most valuable possessions to a little storage space. Everything I couldn't risk, including my portfolio materials, backup discs, and my pricey drawing tablet. Jessica gradually stopped reorganizing. I kept a record of everything. Pictures of the workstation I hijacked. Screenshots of texts about looking for a job in a flat that were ignored. Lists of costs they had never paid for. Jessica even confessed on tape that they hadn't really looked at any flats since they were two at home at my. When I described the problem to my landlord, he was surprisingly understanding. He reminded me they weren't on the lease. They are technically occupants who are not authorized. I can get them taken off. Please don't extend my lease for another month, I informed him. Perhaps I should have said that you would be showing the flat to potential new renters. The day before my intended departure, I made arrangements for my utilities to be turned off. Not right away. I wasn't mean enough to cut off the children's electricity or water, but I was mean enough to make Mike and Jessica act at last. Keeping things normal was the most difficult aspect. As I got ready, I put up with Jessica moving my remaining possessions every day. Despite Mike's justifications on the employment market, I nodded. I even took care of one final time while they went flat searching, which eerily resembled a mall day based on their Instagram posts. As Jessica lay splayed on my couch that night with shopping bags at her feet, she murmured, "We really appreciate everything you've done. You're a wonderful sister for allowing us to remain till we locate the ideal location." "When is that going to happen?" I inquired, observing her as she unpacks her brand new shoes. "Oh, it's just like that. These things require time. We can't be content with any flat. We must consider the youngsters, don't we? The kids? This place is ideal for us, really. Plenty of room, a pleasant neighborhood, and an excellent school district. We've reorganized now. We might as well spend the summer here, at least." I grinned as I surveyed my old workplace, which is now a tumultuous playground. Yes, they were unaware that I would be leaving in 3 days over the summer. They have no concept how comfy they are. My life's invasion was coming to an end, unaware that confrontation isn't always the greatest form of retaliation. It's well planned. On a Wednesday when nobody was around, I relocated. Jessica at her appointment at the salon. Mike at what looked to be more beer than networking at his weekly networking lunch, as well as the school children. My new flat was prepared. The relocation company is prompt and effective. Everything I had was in my new home or securely stored by midday, along with printouts of all the expenses they had accrued during their stay, 3 months' worth of supermarket receipts, power bills that showed 3 times the usual consumption, and even estimates for fixing the walls. Emma had marked with markers. I put a thorough letter on the kitchen counter. I wrote to Mike and Jessica, "I'll be gone by the time you read this. I have notified the landlord that I will not be renewing my lease, which expires in 2 weeks. Next Tuesday, the utilities will be cut off. Until then, you need to make fresh plans. Everything is documented by me. You destroyed my workstation, you went shopping while pretending to be poor, and you didn't look for a job. The landlord and, if required, The police will be notified if you try to harass me or do any damage to the flat. You put the drafting table away. I've transferred it to my new location. And all the other things I own. You own what's left, including accountability for your own life. I was aware that within hours of their return, there would be radioactive fallout. There were so many texts on my phone. How could you have done this to us, Jessica? Mike, very pleasant. Leaving your family behind. Jessica, the children are in tears. Are you content now? Mike, tell us where you relocated, please. Jessica, Mom would be really embarrassed by you. I banned their social media accounts after blocking their phone numbers. The flying monkeys came next. They had enlisted mutual acquaintances to accuse me. It seemed like a haven in my new flat. I put up a sign of my regained freedom in my repaired workplace. It was my landlord who called the next morning. He seemed delighted as he replied, "Your stepsister tried to claim tenants' rights." I informed her that she must leave before the utilities are cut off and that uninvited residents have no rights. What was her reaction to that? About what you would anticipate? Much sobbing about children who are homeless and family loyalty. She ought to have considered that before exploiting yours, I informed her. The guilt trips may have worked in the past, but now that I'm sitting in my quiet new house, my workstation is back to normal. I was so relieved. Family stations relayed the news of their response. They had accused everyone of fabricating a story about my brutality and treachery, how I had suddenly deserted them, traumatized their children, and left them destitute. However, there were flaws in their story, large ones. My Aunt Susan questioned them. Why did Jessica post about her weekly spa days if you were so desperate? During job interviews, why was Mike checking in at sports bars? They were deceived by their social media histories. They videotaped 3 months of going on shopping trips, going to salons and having lengthy meals while living rent-free in my flat while claiming poverty. From Florida, my ex-stepfather called. Jessica claims that you abruptly ejected them. Is what he stated true? Look over the messages they sent me once they moved in. It was intended to be a short-term measure while they recovered. They hadn't even searched for flats 3 months later. He sighed. It sounds like Jessica. She has always relied on other people to take care of her issues. That's how her mother and I spoiled her. The utilities were scheduled to be terminated 2 days prior. At last, reality set in. My landlord stated that they had begun packing, but not before Jessica made one more attempt at deceit. She promised to cover future rent, he informed me. I informed her that I had already arranged for new renters, those who have never experienced foreclosure. When they originally needed a place to stay, Mike's parents had been tough to live with, but they ended up moving in with them. It's funny how opportunities present themselves when you're at a loss. But the stillness was the finest retaliation. The composition, the freedom to live without continual demands and guilt trips, to work uninterrupted, and to maintain an orderly workspace. My company bounced back fast. It turns out that not being regarded as free childcare makes it simpler to achieve deadlines. My clients saw an improvement in my work, which resulted in recommendations and additional contracts. Through a common acquaintance, Jessica tried one more time to get in touch with me a week after they moved out. She claims that ultimately they would have sought a place of their own. According to the buddy, all you had to do was be understanding and patient. I said that I had been patient for 3 months. When they confiscated my workplace without my consent, understanding completely vanished. She added that they could soon want lodging once more. Regarding their living situation, Mike's parents are being challenging. 6 months after my epic escape, I blocked that friend to portion 3. Segment 1, 600 words. My company was doing really well. With my professional workplace restored and the tranquility of my new flat, I was able to increase my prices and take on additional customers. In order to manage my increasing workload, I had even engaged a virtual assistant. Although Jessica and Mike were still able to make their presence felt, the family turmoil had largely subsided. They had relocated 3 more times from Mike's parents to progressively worse rental properties, each time complaining about unjust landlords or antagonistic neighbors. It seems that others were less understanding of their entitled behavior than I had been. I was informed by my Aunt Susan about their efforts to track out their next victim. Their notoriety preceded them, despite their attempts to stay with different family members. Nobody wanted to take the chance of being their next free guest. In fact, Jessica dared to propose that we move in together. Susan informed me as we were having coffee, claimed to have learned the importance of respecting limits. That's precisely what she told you, I reminded her. At least the children had discovered some security. Jessica and Mike only had them on the weekends, but Mike's parents had insisted on having them stay during the week so they could continue attending their school. Although it wasn't perfect, it was still preferable than the disorder they had been experiencing. My new flat turned out to be all I had hoped it would be. I established a functional home office with a specific area for client meetings. My workspace remained tidy. Demands for last-minute childcare kept my kitchen tidy and disturbed my work. Jessica sent me an unexpected email one morning. I've been thinking a lot lately. When we remained with you, we might not have handled things as well as we might have. Even if we were going through a difficult moment, that doesn't justify taking advantage of us. Now I see that. You are missed by the children. Would you be open to getting together for coffee? It was the closest she would ever get to apologizing to me. However, there was something strange about the time. I gave Mike's mother, who had turned into an unexpected ally, a call. She affirmed, "Oh, they were just evicted again. Jessica has been phoning people in an attempt to get lodging." "Avoid falling for that," I replied with a brief letter. "I'm happy you've acquired this viewpoint. I hope it influences your future decision-making. However, I have no interest in meeting at this time." She responded in a matter of minutes. "We've come a long way and have discovered this wonderful flat. However, we require assistance with the deposit. You can repay a little loan immediately for the benefit of the children." It was there, the true cause of the abrupt apologies. I didn't even try to answer. A customer who discovered me via my updated portfolio website gave me a sizable design assignment later that week. The cash would be equivalent to the 3 months' rent from my previous flat, which I had used to help Jessica's family while they were living with me. I was filled with thankfulness for having the strength to break out as I sat at my immaculate drafting table and watched the sunset through my office window. Sometimes having the guts to refuse toxic family members is the best present you can offer yourself. There was yet another round of family strife during my first Christmas season in my new flat. Mike and Jessica had planned a campaign to make me the bad guy at all the family get-togethers, conveniently neglecting to address their own behavior. However, it's Christmas. Mary, my aunt, begged. Is it not possible to forgive them? Their lesson has been learned. Had they? Despite both of them finally having employment, Mike's mother claims that they were just ordered to vacate their most recent flat due to non-payment of rent. Jessica worked part-time at a boutique, but she spent the most of her earnings on keeping up her looks. Mike had landed a job at a car dealership, but he preferred to socialize with his coworkers than making sales. According to Mike's mother, they continue to live beyond their means: designer clothing, pricey dining establishments, trips to the salon. Then, when the rents rise, they complain about poverty. The children are stable with us during the week, at least. I turned down the Christmas meal with the family. Instead, I decided to throw a little party for the family members who had helped me at my new home. Susan, my aunt, brought her renowned pie. My ex-stepfather even traveled down from Florida for a little visit, and Mike's mother arrived with the kids. "A house ought to feel like this," Susan said as she observed my neat workspace. Calm, courteous. As if an entitlement tornado had swept over, the children had moved away from the pandemonium of their parents. They had improved their routines. Tyler had done well in school, and Emma had stopped drawing on walls. They still had a lot of energy, but instead of ruining other people's space, they were using it for constructive purposes. According to Mike's mother, having them during the week has had a significant impact. They require structure rather than unrelenting chaos. My company kept expanding. I transformed the little eating nook in the flat into a space for client meetings, complete with a polished backdrop for video conferences. No more Jessica interrupting meetings or kids yelling in the background. Jessica tried to get back in touch on the Friday before Christmas. "Your Christmas cards were produced by the children. We would be delighted to drop them off. Perhaps pay us a little visit. We can get up to speed." Bring up the past. I've been thinking about it a lot. I was the first to know the script. An innocent-seeming visit. A depressing account of their present living circumstances follows. And lastly, the request. Only a brief visit, until they discovered something else. Just because we are related, I said, you can mail the cards. My address is still the same. She said, don't be like that. Christmas is here. Families ought to be together. We've altered a great deal. You'll see. And we discovered this incredible flat. However, the deposit is a little excessive. The rest I didn't care to read. Rather, the first concentrated on wrapping gifts for the children, which I would then mail to Mike's parents. Their kids could have a secure Christmas without worrying about where they'll live the next month, or about their parents taking advantage of family members. Mike's mother called me unexpectedly a year after I had escaped. Finally, Mike and Jessica had found an affordable flat in a little complex across town. Just a simple 2-bedroom flat that fits their actual budget, with no extras or a prime location. At last, the evictions caught up with them, she clarified. They were forced to live within their means since they could not find a nice apartment to rent. Sometimes the only way to learn is to strike bottom. During the week, the children continued to spend time with their grandparents, as arranged by family court. Every now and again, they came to my new flat, either with their grandma or without Jessica and Mike. During one visit, Emma remarked that Aunt Natalie's home was neat and quite quiet. Their grandma pointedly emphasized that this is because she respects other people's space and takes good care of her belongings. The size of my company had doubled. I had a number of high-profile organizations on my client list, and I had employed 2 remote designers to help with the burden. I had been able to concentrate on my development because of the stability and security of my new existence, rather than attempting to control chaos all the time. Jessica continued to sometimes try to get in touch with me, mainly when they needed money, but her communications were no longer effective. I had discovered that family is neither a weapon nor a justification for misbehavior. During his most recent visit, my ex-stepfather summed it up well. Allowing family members to suffer the repercussions of their own behavior is sometimes the most kind thing you can do for them. You didn't leave them behind, you just stopped giving them permission. When my Aunt Susan came to visit, she saw that the picture pegs on the wall of my living room were empty. After relocating, I removed the family portraits since I didn't want to be reminded of that hectic period every day. Now you may write your own tale on these walls, she recommended. Your accomplishments, your designs, your tranquil new existence. She was correct. I started making a gallery the next day, along with wall-framed images of my finest designs, professional accolades I had received, and a few chosen pictures of the family members who had supported me. Jessica messaged me right away after seeing the pictures on my social media accounts. It's good to see that you have photographs posted. We ought to get a fresh family portrait for your wall, perhaps at your house for supper. She was so persistent that I had to chuckle. She was still looking for a way to get back in. But in the end, I had complete control over how I decorated my mental and physical walls. I received a Christmas card from Mike's mom that included a recent picture of the children. They appeared content and at ease. Tyler was participating in Little League baseball, while Emma had enrolled in a children's painting class. In the stability, they were flourishing. Their grandparents demonstrated how important boundaries and structure might be. My new flat was more than simply a place to live. It served as evidence of what may happen when you quit letting other people's chaos ruin your tranquility. Every neatly arranged drawer, peaceful morning, and fruitful client meeting served as a reminder that sometimes your own family is the one you need to safeguard the most.